Final ending to Brand New Next Door, Part 1 down below. Have you considered seeking public office? If people vote for barbecue, you might win. No, I replied, giggling. I've just done a lot of parties, you learn as you go. Angie answered phone calls. From 100 to nearly 300, it changed. 3 local girls were employed by us to assist with serving. On my end, I had Charlie, Myra, and Sherry. It was the most idyllic day ever. Warm but not stuffy, with a light wind. With fans installed in the overhead struts to keep it cooler, I had transformed the castle tent into the dining area. 400 pounds of perfectly cooked and shredded pork. For the Jewish partners, 20 chickens and 2 beef briskets were cooked in a separate cooker, so that they would know what wasn't kosher, label the side dishes. Mostly from Angie's garden: potato salad, coleslaw, baked beans, squash casserole, and grilled vegetables. Desserts would be a variety of homemade cakes and pies. We also gave the kids some chilled watermelon as a bonus. Even though I was worn out, it was worthwhile. 300 were invited, 420 came. The children made the difference. I put Charlie in charge of watching the 3 teenage boys while they parked. Before they had dinner, they spent an hour chatting and mingling. To maintain the relaxed atmosphere, most of it was self-serve. The dining tent was off limits to alcohol due to the family-friendly theme. An hour after the meal, I planned to open the self-serve bar and 2 kegs that I had placed in a small tent by the side. Senior partners ensured that everyone knew that overindulgence would not be tolerated. Youngsters played on the games they oversaw or the equipment I had purchased, running around in packs and yelling and laughing. Angie and Ben were excellent hosts, visiting each group to ensure that everyone was enjoying themselves. As has always been the case, women tended to congregate to discuss about their men, while men tended to talk business together. We'd position comfy, cushioned furniture beneath each shade tree. I paused to admire Sherry, looking sophisticated in her modest sundress and with her hair styled in a bun. A group of people were gathered around her, praising the meal. Many business cards were exchanged and given by both of us. We assembled everyone in the spotless dining tent for a brief round of speeches right before the event ended. I had set up a small pie system and turned on the microphones. The senior partner wished everyone well in their future pursuits and thanked them for attending. He thanked Sherry and me for organizing it and commended Angie and Ben for hosting. The next thing he said took everyone by surprise. He had a reputation for being ponderous. I have nothing more to say than that. I'm not going to mess it up now because it's been so much fun. We have a few leftovers and some containers. Save it and bring some home. The ice cream is finished as well. Everyone grab a bowl. He stepped down to what he claimed to be the biggest round of applause he had ever experienced during a speech. We had several flavors of ice cream makers ready to go. Banana, pineapple, chocolate, fresh blueberries, and vanilla, of course. Some of the adults and some children who ate too quickly suffered from ice cream headaches. Angie's garden was a huge success. I saw her a few times, giving tours and fielding questions to groups of women and 1 or 2 men. Frequently, she would gather a bunch of beans or a ripe tomato and give them away. Her patch produced some of the chilled watermelons we had for dessert. Because their seeds were slightly larger than usual and gave them more range in the kids' seed spitting competition, they soon became the most sought after. When Angie handed Sherry the check, she almost had a stroke. It was officially a corporate event because it had grown to such an extent that they would not allow Ben to pay for it. Another check for a 25% bonus was present, along with a note from the senior partner expressing gratitude to us once more. I accepted the bonus check and divided it among Charlie, Myra, and the children we had utilized. Sherry deserved the remainder that I gave her. It appears that Ben was employed by a company that specialized in business law, as I began receiving calls before the following week's parties. We decided to incorporate as a separate business because the demand was so high and the profits were so strong. After quitting, Sherry took a manager role. She improved and remained good. Naturally, we arranged for all of the rentals. Myra hired her husband after I made her the manager of the rental company. It was perfect except for one thing: we needed the help and he had been laid off. She is in charge both at home and at work, so to speak. I will never again make a decision in my lifetime. Well, this is your fault. Take care of it, Donnie. Just consider how many men actually end up getting to sabotage their boss at work. That gave him more hope. Sherry started dressing more professionally and occasionally had to attend client meetings in the evening. At last, we had enough money to purchase that Cadillac for her. I believed I was winning. Winter arrived and then disappeared. Sad as were work days in the party industry. You were either meeting with clients or working at an actual event that you were planning. Sherry handled the meetings and most of the planning as per our agreement. I would handle staffing, equipment, and meal preparation. In actuality, the parties brought in more money for us than the rental company did. We never seemed to have enough time for one another. When she began attending her meetings on Saturday nights and occasionally did not return home until after 11, it became unbearable. I asked her not to do it right away, but she insisted that it was best for the customers for her to meet at their request. I snapped after 3 consecutive weeks of it. I warned her that she would be responsible for the next late meeting she attended. I was out, I wouldn't coordinate, I wouldn't cook. She cried out, I thought this was a partnership. At the moment, I'm more drawn to partnerships between husband and wife. Decide for yourself what matters more, the company or us." Her screams had woken Billy, so I ignored her and went to get him. She continued to vent. I carried out what I had threatened. She had a meeting the following month that kept her away until 11:30. She wanted to work with me to plan it on Sunday afternoon. No what, honey, I'm not assisting with the planning or coordination, and I'm definitely not preparing the food. I informed you that the first contract she would have to complete on her would be the one that would cost me a set a night with my wife. I may decide to give Billy a ride. Her mouth hanging open, I left her. It was a catastrophe. They didn't enjoy the ambience, the food, or the service. The client expressed his disappointment that she had failed to live up to her reputation and that there was no bonus. Until then, I'd been getting terrible treatment from her. On Sunday, she emerged from the bedroom and waved a small white handkerchief. Truce. Billy was getting his breakfast from me. No. Her eyes widened. A truce is not something I will accept. I'm looking for a surrender. We resume our lives once you accept my terms and conditions. The deal is over if you reject them or choose to ignore them. No haggling. Not one. Accept it or don't. Billy was picked up by me. Ben and Angie need my advice on something, so I'm heading over to see them. We'll return in about an hour. Angie spoiled Billy, and Billy loved her. She frequently watched us while we worked a party. He had just started to speak, and Angie was one of his first words. As he said it, she started crying. He was only beginning to walk, but as soon as I set him down, he would run to her, walking as quickly as his little unsteady stride would allow. When he could, he would try to follow Ben around and had learned to say his name. Ben was interested in talking to me about the small dirt track vehicle they kept in one of their sheds. Mr. Henderson loved racing and had a car that he sponsored, but he was not a driver. Although I knew the engine was blown, the transmission and roll cage continued to function. Think it can be fixed? No, it requires a few small parts and a new engine. It can be rebuilt, but it cannot be fixed. Why would you wish to do that? He appeared ashamed. I love NASCAR a lot. This would be ideal for me because I've always wanted to drive a race car. You never could tell, though. How's Angie feel about this? She is willing to watch one race, but she isn't too excited about it. Please let her know it's safe. Isn't that right? In general, although I've never heard of someone dying in a car like this, injuries are possible. Learn as you go by starting in the beginner races. We made repairs to the vehicle. After learning a few things from more experienced drivers, Ben was a regular Friday night fixture at the nearby dirt track. After we'd kissed and made up, Sherry and I went to watch them one evening. Ben seemed to adore it despite the fact that it was filthy and loud. His pit crew consisted of Charlie and a few kids from the neighborhood. We were in the pits with them because the rules were quite lax. When Ben began to lose position and speed, he was leading and pulled into the pit. The car was in perfect condition. The heat had worn him down. He had been battling the flu all week. After removing him from the vehicle, we began giving him liquids. They were both let down. It appeared as though he might win the points championship because he was leading his class in points. His chances would be severely harmed if he dropped out of the race. Charlie raised his voice. You know, he's allowed a sub when he's sick. He had me squarely in his sights. A waste of time, Charlie. I could never fit in the roll cage. It's made for someone his size. Someone his size or smaller will be needed. We both pivoted to face Angie. Oh no, I have no knowledge of racing. You're not required to race. Knowing how to shift gears is all that's required. Simply keep out of the way and near the back of the group. You will save a ton of points and be credited for finishing the race. Ben was taking in the conversation. Achieve it, honey. That trophy is something I really want. You're safe in the cage, just exercise caution. She gave him a long, hard look. Pass the helmet to me, and not a word if I mess up. We secured her with straps. Remain positioned at the base. Once you maintain a constant pace, they will eventually realize and move on. Are you certain about this? She met my eyes with hers. And oh, she then floored it and sprayed gravel everywhere. The first 15 laps didn't really go anywhere. Knowing her score, the other competitors disregarded her. All but one. He trailed Ben in the points race, so it would greatly help his position if he were to take the car out of the race before the finish. Angie was terrified when he gave her a bump on the following lap. Her scream was audible through the headset. What the hell is he doing? The other headset was mine. His goal is to disqualify you from the competition. The next time he approaches you, floor it after applying the brakes. He may bump into you, but he won't be able to cause much damage with his speed, and if he accelerates, he could get stuck in traffic and lose a few positions. She did it flawlessly. He shot up, she floored it as soon as he touched her bumper and she tapped the brakes before he could catch up. She gained a lap as he became entangled in the pack. Once more, he managed to get her, but this time he was lucky and he buried her in the wall. She pulled into the pit after issuing the warning. She shot out of the cage, glancing at the bent fender. She hurled her helmet into the vehicle. Can you fix it? We could pull it out, but there wouldn't be time to hammer it into shape. She felt energized. It seems that she enjoyed it. Get me back in the race, pull the damn thing off. That guy will go in the wall, I promise. While I got her in the cage and fastened her seatbelt, Charlie pulled the fender. Avoid becoming foolish. That results in injury. Keep an eye on him. He'll repeat the action if given the chance. Clear, was yelled by Charlie, and she returned to the race, driving it like it was a Maserati that had been stolen. In fact, she was overtaking cars. She noticed him approaching while I was shouting into the headset, "Cut left, now." She surprised him by cutting to the top of the track. He caused a pileup by slamming into the following car, which was sent sideways. Angie had already overcome it and was in third place when the warning was lifted. By the time the checkered flag flew, she was leading the pack, but her lost laps caused her to finish 7th out of 15. The man attempting to push her over failed to finish, and as a result, he finished 15th overall, placing him even further behind Ben. As he and his team were preparing to charge our pit, Angie emerged from the car and violently removed her helmet. What does it feel like to be outdriven by a woman? She leaned over and gave her a pat after turning around. Then she burst into laughter and gave Ben a hug. The man was at a loss for what to do. He finally inhaled deeply, but I intervened, saying, "You had better say something courteous when you speak. You lost to her in your own game. Take it as a teaching opportunity." His own crew was smiling openly, having been primed for a fight only moments before. He pivoted on his heel and departed. Sherry had been taking photos nonstop. Angie became addicted after that. She bought a car with some of her trust fund. She raced in the women's division at the local track for the remainder of the year. Although she started too late to receive any points, she still won 2 races. Ben secured his trophy. They were already making plans for the following year. His company and a few of their clients decided to paint the 2 cars in the same colors and with their logos placed prominently on them. They also had our 2 company logos on them. Even though many successful racers started their careers on tracks similar to this one, they knew it was just for fun because it was a small, illegal dirt track circuit that was hardly recognized or legal. However, Angie and Ben found that it was a shared hobby that strengthened their bond. What was shared between Sherry and me? Billy is the only exception. Due to our growth, we were now operating with 2 crews. She was behaving more arrogant, dressing more nicely, and barely had time for Billy and me. She became involved in a professional women's group that she had joined, attending meetings and social gatherings every 2 weeks. I was happy for her when she received an award, so I didn't mind. A few of her friends looked uncomfortable when I introduced myself as her husband at the banquet, which I attended. I asked her about it, because I wasn't as stupid as people seemed to think. A few of those women looked incredibly shocked when I introduced myself as your spouse. "You don't tell me about your city-dwelling husband." I was kidding, but she got really red in the face. She recovered quite well. "No, my dear, they were just taken aback to discover that I wasn't making you up. I really should take you to more mixers so I can show you around." It felt like an explanation, but one that made sense. We got bogged down at work, so I shelved it. She ought to have had a wake-up call and decided to stick a little closer to her house. The early fall brought a slowdown in business. We reduced to 1 crew once more. They were competent, and occasionally we left them in charge while one of us showed up out of courtesy to reassure the client. We had a solid clientele, some of whom went on to become close friends. Ben's boss called me and asked that we combine Ben's birthday celebration with his victory. They wanted to thank him and give him a chance to boast about his racing career because he was a nice guy and very good at what he did. They requested that I prepare food. In what number? All adults, about 40. Only his pals. While you're presumably his closest friend outside of work, we don't really want you there on a professional level. He claims that he and Angie might not have stayed if it weren't for you. Simply put, we didn't want to offend you by using a different caterer. I'm happy to cook, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. How are things going? I'll prepare the coleslaw and cook the meats, pig, and chickens. Assign your wives to prepare the side dishes and desserts. He'll definitely value it more, I'm sure. I gave Sherry the date and told her about it. We've already signed the contract, and I have an event on that day. I am unable to. I felt a little enraged. They are our companions. We wouldn't even have a business if they hadn't asked us to throw the party the first time. If you failed to show up, that would be offensive. Show up as a courtesy, check that everything is running well, hand it off to the crew, and then leave. Consider Ben and Angie. After bringing the cookers over, I had arranged them. I went back home in my truck to find more parking. Ben and I had plowed a little road through the woods from my deck to his porch ever since our properties were combined. It was much faster to ride 4-wheelers back and forth. Angie would be here, I knew, if I pulled into the driveway and noticed a pink helmet perched on the deck railing. The celebration was in full swing, with everyone interacting and having a terrific time. Sherry had just called to say she would be there in an hour, but she was stuck at work. We needed ice, which one of the partners was supposed to bring, but we were almost out. I offered to take my 4-wheeler back and get some since I had some in our freezer from a party the previous week. Mine was blocked in, so I had to take Ben's. He neglected to add gas, so I had to walk home when I ran out of gas halfway there. I saw them as I was about to emerge from the woods. The patio door's blinds were drawn, allowing a clear view of the living room. There on the couch was a couple having a great time together. I believe some of the kids living around had gained entry to the house. Recently, there had been an increase in break-ins. They took very little, but they partied a little, threw some parties, stole whatever alcohol they could find, and made some mess on the beds. Screwing them was what I meant to mean by messing. When the lovers changed, I was about to raise my hand to call the police. Her top was lying next to the couch as she slid off of her. Sherry was the one. The man was one of the junior associates from Ben's office that I knew. Why he had to miss the party was a mystery to them. Although my initial reaction was to charge in and beat the living hell out of them both, I had learned a few things from having my best friend as a lawyer. Before coming down here, Ben was actually a divorce attorney for a while. One day, he told me, I hated it. You get cynical watching people destroy their lives. They would avoid a great deal of trouble if they simply tackled it rationally. Sadly, it's difficult to respond rationally, particularly if they are aware of the infidelity. Furthermore, it gets worse when someone is assaulted. It usually happens to the guy, and it severely damages his negotiating position. Sometimes they lose their children as a result of his violent tendencies, which her attorney will paint in graphic detail. In a divorce, especially one involving children, nobody comes out ahead. That's the only thing the lawyers profit from. It's difficult to remain rational when watching your wife betray you while standing in the woods. I was walking toward the door, shaking with anger, when I thought of what Ben had said. I faded back into the trees, remembering also what he'd said about bargaining positions. I called Ben after making my way a short distance back down the trail. His voice was happy and a little buzzed as he answered. Hey buddy, what's up with this delay? Should I send Angie to find you? No, put Angie on. I have a question for her. Angie asked if she had to come get me when she came on. She was lucid because she didn't drink much. Angie, I truly need your assistance. Sherry was not alone when I saw her at the house, and she was dressed modestly. Although I don't think it's a good idea to confront her right now, I still want to. I need the most sober person in the group to come and testify. I also need a recommendation for a divorce attorney. Aid me. Her voice carried the pain I could hear. You poor fellow. Are you certain? Sorry, if you weren't certain, this conversation wouldn't be happening. Remain back until I arrive. After 20 minutes, Angie, Ben, and the wives of 2 of his partners emerged from the woods on foot. Are you sure, Will? I pulled out the photos from my phone and showed them. Among the women, one spoke up. Will, I'm a really excellent divorce attorney. My spouse felt it would be a good idea, and I have a different practice. I'm providing guidance on the best course of action as well as my services if necessary. She was only known to me socially as the spouse of one of Ben's partners. I had no idea that she was an independent lawyer. In an attempt to soothe me, Angie gave me a hug and massaged my shoulders while telling me to think about Billy. Many thanks, Julie. Please accept both offers from me. How can I proceed? Remaining composed is the hardest thing you can do in this circumstance. When we confront them, don't start a conversation with them. Instead, let me speak. Will, exercise self-control. It will work to your benefit. In the shadows, she grinned like a wolf. That being said, if he's dumb enough to try to assault you in front of a bunch of lawyers, you are within your legal rights to defend yourself. Ben hung up the phone. They're practically there. Come on, please. It had been arranged by them. The senior partner was reportedly arriving at my driveway in search of the ice I had assured them of. The others were waiting outside on the deck, navigating the side steps to stay out of the patio door's light. The knock was heard by us. Miss Sherman, are you inside the room? We ran out of ice when Will sent us to get more. She didn't answer the door, so he carried on with his loud conversation. Well, he did provide us with the key. Guys, come on. I don't like to be in people's homes when they're not. As Sherry heard the door open, she and her partner were gathering clothes. He fled onto the deck to hide in the shadows as she flung open the door. When I switched on the light, the expression in his eyes was priceless. For those moments when we wanted to enjoy the darkness without having to go back inside, we had a switch placed outside. That's usually when we started to get bare. Holding his shoes, shorts, and pants, he stood there with 4 cell phones clicking away. We were standing on the porch when Sherry, who had somehow managed to get dressed, noticed us leading the partners to the kitchen. She let out a scream, bolted from the house, and disappeared. The senior partner raised a hand, but he was at a loss for words. A single word. Monday, arrive at my office by 9. Go now. He left after placing all the authority a senior executive had amassed in his voice. Ben and Angie had surrounded me, each holding a hand to prevent me from becoming foolish. I was given Julie's card and instructed to report to her office on Monday afternoon at 2. She gave me a hug after that. Everyone returned to the celebration. In order to avoid having to be in the house, I went. It broke up early, of course, and I slept in their guest room. I didn't get much sleep, and Angie let Billy loose on me to wake me up. You cannot sleep through a 2-year-old's attentions. With a start, I realized that I hadn't given much thought to how to keep him safe. Fortunately, Angie had volunteered to pick him up for me after telling my mother-in-law that I was having too much fun. She had previously picked him up when we were just starting out with our party business. Angie's allowed him to feed her breakfast while he sat on her lap, smearing syrup all over her face and laughing uncontrollably. It brought a smile to our faces. Ben said we'd talk when we put him to sleep when she took him to the bathroom to clean them both up. We had our first work conference that afternoon. Angie got right to the point. Divorce. Yes, I can see it coming now that I can look back. We stopped exchanging dreams. Her dream home would always be in a large city. I have deep roots in the country and have always been a country boy. What about Billy? I am adamant about wanting custody. I believe a child would get in the way of her desired lifestyle. Ben noticed a few things. While I acknowledge Billy wouldn't fit in with the lifestyle, he gives her control over you. She could use the custody dispute as leverage to demand a larger payment. Everything else is ready to be used. Be cautious around Julie. She'll run over anyone or anything that gets in her way and go for the throat. We need to prevent it from moving from talks to hostilities. I was away from her for 6 days. She was there when I got home. I had to use all of my strength to resist throwing her out the door. She recoiled when she saw my eyes. Please hold off on speaking just now. I'm just here to see Billy and pick up a few things, though I think I deserve it. Well, please, for a short while only. I'll then quietly depart. Even my car keys are yours to have. I gave in to her allure, allowing her to play with Billy without interfering. He appeared bored because she hadn't given him much attention lately. She asked me to help her carry her clothes out after asking for her keys back so she could open the trunk. I heard her car crank and went in for another load. Before she could shift it into gear, I was on her, having slipped through the screen door. I quickly grabbed the keys and tossed them into the driveway. When I got Billy out of the car seat, she was screaming, "Fuck you. You can't keep him, he's mine." Billy was yelling, confused by what was happening. As she was swearing loudly, she noticed Angie using her iPhone to record everything. She had made it a habit to ride her four-wheeler in order to check on me and see Billy. She would spend 30 or 40 minutes with Ben, then head home right before he got home. Perhaps anticipated your presence here. A little before the husband gets home, is that all? Ben, poor guy, how many times has he had sloppy seconds? Does he keep an eye on things from the closet? Angie turned pale with rage. If I hadn't let out a loud cry, I'm not sure what would have happened. Hey, Shirley, go now, I mean really go. Going forward, a court order is required if you wish to see Billy. Before I call the police, please get the hell out of my life. I wanted to say so much more, but Billy came first in my mind. Sherry walked out, still howling. Angie wrote down each word. After obtaining the tape the following day, Julie filed for a restraining order, demanding that Sherry appear for a mental health assessment. She captured her yelling reaction on camera. I was curious about her residence. It seems that the man she was dating was her new partner, and they were together. One more thing against her. Because of the affair, he was fired. Despite their pretentious wording, the message was obvious. You had vanished without a trace. He found success at a different company, albeit with a lower pay. I informed all of our event clients in writing that I would honor any outstanding contracts even though I was no longer affiliated with the company. It was Sherry's fault after that. Julie talked me out of saying screw it when I was about to. Your reputation is good, and you might want to re-establish it in the future. Additionally, it provides Sherry with a steady income, which may be useful in the future. The dance started after she hired her own lawyer. It was the house she desired. Unfortunately, my parents' name was still on it. She desired the party supplies. It was out of her reach because she was renting it from my supply company, which was protected by the prenuptial agreement. Julie set most of our accounts to freeze. She took care of one crew while I took care of the other by coerced agreement. Only salaries and supplies could be deducted from the money. The remaining amount had to be kept frozen until the divorce. After I fulfilled my commitment, all earnings were deposited into a new account that Sherry solely managed, and tried to make it as fair as possible. Sherry refused to give up until Julie and her attorney persuaded her to do so if she wanted to be left with any money at all. I declined her request for a last meeting so she could vent. Her lawyer turned out to be the 5th man she had dated in the previous 18 months. Most of the slick city types are impoverished. I couldn't come up with a single thing I wanted to say to her that didn't conclude with "damn witch." In an attempt to be polite to Billy, it was his 3rd birthday, and he wasn't missing her all that much. She gave me a quarter of the profits, but ultimately she ended up with the party catering business. Julie was like a carrot, and I really didn't have time anymore. She still had her business and some working capital, though. That was all she managed to extract from me. Billy gave me sole custody of him. She was allowed to visit me at will, and I never turned her down. But she had to follow the guidelines. No men during her pregnancy with Billy, and she forfeited her rights if she ever exposed him to anything deemed dangerous, either physically or morally. 1 more year went by, and the visits dwindled. Billy appeared unaffected. Ben and Angie ended up being my rock. They supported me as I dealt with my grief and rage. Despite having agreed that all contact with Billy would end if Sherry's mother assisted her in breaking the custody agreement, Sherry's mother continued to babysit Billy. Ben gave Angie permission to take on the role of surrogate mother. He continued to follow Ben about, and on Ben's desk at work was a picture of the 3 of them, him, Angie, and Billy. He let them believe it until a certain point. People thought he was a stepson. He asked for my permission first, claiming that it improved his relationship with new clients and made him appear like a family man. I gave him a copy of my will, naming them executors and guardians of Billy in the event that I passed away, and it shocked him so much. "Ben, you are a family man. You've been that way forever. Together with us, you have the most amazing woman I've ever seen. No male lawyer has ever made me cry. It was in motion. After some time, I started dating. I met my needs and they were enjoyable, but I never got to know anyone I thought would stick around. Angie was torturing me, telling me Billy needed a mother. I simply gazed at her. He's got one, and soon as I find her match I'll be married so fast your head would spin. I got the closest with a lawyer, of all people. It was the daughter of the senior partners. She was a few years older, had recently gone through a difficult divorce, secured a fantastic job on the opposite coast, and was taking a 3-month break to regroup. Her dad called me when she realized she needed an escort. I need your help, Will. I really want to take her to the banquet because she's new to the area, but she needs an escort. For what it's worth, people think she's pretty. I agreed because I had nothing to do. It felt like deja vu all over again when I rented a Cadillac. Was she attractive? She was dead on. Very good looking, blonde, fair-skinned, and just 5 feet tall. She had the appearance of a living China doll. I sensed that interest was growing. She seemed to sense something, and her vivacious nature took over. Oh my, an authentic redneck. Never before have I been this close to one. Do you have teeth? I looked at her very seriously. Yes, I do. Goody. The tone for the evening was set when Ben, Angie, and her parents started laughing. It was the most esteemed charity function of the year. Everything in black tie. I felt like I looked really hot. The food was tasty, and Rhonda was always chatting. Later, she told me it was a nervous characteristic. Talking about the appetizer, entree, and dessert, she covered them all. Do you ever stop talking? She flushed, then smiled innocently at me. Only when I have something interesting in my mouth. Angie laughed and Ben snorted coffee through his nose. Get over it, you two. This is meant to be a serious situation. After, there was dancing and a large band. I learned to dance from Angie to prevent myself from being depressed. Graceful and fluid, Sophie was a delight to watch and a wonderful dancing partner. She danced with Ben once and with her father twice. The rest were all mine. Sherry passed by Ben and me as we were waiting for the girls by the bandstand. Will, Ben, good to see you. Will, are you alone here? Really, you ought to go out more. Permit me to present my companion. Morgan, Robert. Ben Wilson Morgan, his father, is someone you may know, who founded the network of Morgan Banks. I watched her as she attempted to win us over. She appeared to have put on 10 pounds, and her face had hardened. It was evident from her escort that he wasn't there for thoughtful conversation. That's when Sophie and Angie appeared. She gave me a cheek kiss. Lover, do you miss me? All right. I want to frustrate you the entire night because it will be more enjoyable when we make the crazy, passionate love you have promised. I apologize. Who are your friends? I noticed Angie laughing as I looked past her. I quickly realized that she had revealed Sherry's identity to Sophie, and they were fully exploiting it. Where are my civilities? Robert Morgan from the Morgan banking family. Hello, Sophie. And this is Sherry Blankenship, a local businesswoman and my former wife. It's Sophie Williams from Williams, Roberts, Howe, and Hatfield. Sherry, Robert. Perhaps you've heard of them. So, sweetheart, ought we to waltz? With both of them mouths agape, we left. I muttered. Angie told you who she was, didn't she? As we danced, Sophie inched herself closer. Yes, she did, along with some background. I'm hoping she has a terrible evening. Don't worry, from the looks both are giving us, I think they are. After we were done, she pulled my head down to kiss me for 2 minutes, tongue and all. Did she see that? Please give me a minute so my brain can reabsorb blood. Thank you, and yes, she did see it. You're welcome, and the pleasure was mine. As expected, they arrived at the table a little after that. Sherry asked me to dance, and Robert asked Sophie. Just for old time's sake. Sophie gave a charming smile. I'd love to, but I promised my lover the rest of my dances. I did the same. I apologize, Sherry. Perhaps next time. Angie covered her mouth with a napkin as they appeared stunned, trying not to laugh. Without saying anything more, they departed. I gave Sophie a quick glance. I'm glad you're not staying here permanently. She appeared injured. Why would you say something so hurtful? I was beginning to enjoy you. Because everywhere we went, there would be fights. You fighting to keep me off you, and me fighting to keep the men away who would swarm to you. She grinned. Gradually. What makes you think I'd put up a fight? We made the most of our time together, and she didn't resist. Billy was even kept by Angie for our weekend getaway. To date, she was the greatest lover I had ever had. She was small, but incredibly strong. She never disclosed her age to me, but I guessed it was near 40 because she had the flexibility and firmness of a 20-year-old. She had a 3-step bonding procedure. She showed me pictures of her daughter, a cute little copy of her, and said how much she loved Billy. She appeared to be 13 years old. My ex has her now. I gave him more time because we're going to be 3,000 miles away soon. Thinking of Billy that far away made me sad. Life carries on. I used the time to open a restaurant serving barbecue. Myra continued to manage the rental company, and I gave up on her because she was doing such a great job. Restaurants require a lot of time and have a very low success rate. However, I performed well and already had a solid reputation. I outfitted 4 food trucks that I purchased and dispatched to nearby towns on 4 different days of the week. They achieved great success. I had given up looking for a permanent partner because I still didn't have one. It comes as a surprise to you when you start to appreciate your life and feel genuinely content. I am speaking of tragedy, not love. Billy had 9 years old. When I got home, he rode his little four-wheeler through the woods after getting off the bus at Angie's house. She would go home after riding with him and waving at me. He would assist her with small tasks while she fed him a snack and checked his schoolwork. It was effective for each of us. Angie had decorated a room for him to spend the night, and on the rare occasions I had a date. At 3, he called me immediately after getting off the bus. He was in tears. "Get here quickly, Dad. I can't get Aunt Angie up off the floor. She's crying." I shot across the street. She was sobbing softly on the floor, exactly as he had described. She refused to talk or answer me. Ben's boss called as I was about to dial 911. "Will, I want you to go check on Angie and make sure everything is okay. Now that I'm with her, she's not feeling well. She won't talk to me. Ben has not experienced any mishap, has he?" His voice has emotion in it that I can hear. "Will, Ben is dead. They said that he suffered a heart attack and would likely die soon. When he failed to show up for lunch, we discovered him on the floor of his office. By then, he had been gone for an hour." I nearly dropped the phone. As Ben left, he was Angie's life, even though he had grown to be my best friend. I pulled her into my embrace. For a moment, her face cleared, and she clung to me as if she were drowning. Then, rocking her like a child, I held her on the couch. Not all of the tears that fell were hers. She was undead. His boss brought us his will, and we finally set a funeral date. It had just been updated by him. His ashes were to be dispersed throughout the farm after his cremation. In his will, he said, "It's the only place I ever felt was home." The service and visitation attendants were astounding. The majority of his clients had become friends. His friends from the racetrack made frequent appearances, and every member and staff member of his company was present. Sherry arrived and gave Angie a hug. With Billy nestled on her lap and Sherry's mother by her side, she endured the visitation. They were close, having connected over Billy. Her gaze followed me around the space, becoming agitated if I disappeared from view. Ben, who was older than Angie by 2 years, was in good health at 52. According to the doctors, there is no known cause for this condition, which makes it a hidden one. Now that the funeral had concluded and friends and family had returned to their own lives, the grieving process could start. Billy, Sarah, and I spent roughly 2 weeks residing with her. It wasn't until the end of the second week that she began to resurrect. The reading of the will caused us a little inconvenience, mainly because it made its finality clear. He included a few letters to the people he loved in his updated will as a means of bidding them farewell. Angie was given one. I've never asked, and she's never offered to tell me what was in it up until this point. Billy was given one to open on his 18th birthday, according to him. He also left one for me. "Greetings, Will. I'm out of here if you're reading this. You have my gratitude for being a friend. You took a stiff Yankee lawyer and turned him into a better man, one who was able to let go and enjoy his life more. Being your friend was an honor for me." I gave Billy something. It's a college fund, sufficient to cover all expenses. It was a pleasure doing it for him and you, even though I know you could afford it. What a wonderful child he is. If he takes your advice, I'm sure he'll become a better man. I hope he has pleasant memories of me. This brings us to the serious part. Will, look after her. You will need her for some time. I'm sure you cared for her, and you never did anything to betray her feelings or our friendship. Angie needs someone to love her now and support her during the upcoming difficult times. I'm sorry I can't make it. It would have been great to see Billy in his masculine form. Before you give up, you must find someone for yourself. Ben, I appreciate you being the guy you are and the friend I needed. Naturally, Angie received the majority of his estate, including the farm and investments. He spent a lot of money installing a new, safer bleacher system, an announcer booth, and an improved public address system before giving up on the dirt track he loved so much. The song was renamed in his honor. Angie gave up after a year of trying to return to normalcy. I'm spending some time back in Philadelphia. I'm unable to attend. I can see his ghost everywhere I turn. Billy, who was 10, cried for 2 days straight. I cry alone in my room. I had known her for 8 years as my anchor. Never have I felt so alone and lost. She asked us to watch the farm and gave us the keys. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I would walk the house to inspect the plumbing and fixtures, and I would also turn on her little tractor and give it a little run to keep it in good mechanical condition. She installed a cutting-edge security system while keeping the electricity on. I carried on with my life, giving Billy my full attention. He wanted to hang out with friends now that he was old enough, and I knew he would soon be moving on from me. Boy Central was established in our home. Around the house, there were always 3 or more of his closest friends. I made sure to get to know them and their parents well, hosted them multiple times, and struck up a conversation with them when they picked up the kids. I dated a couple of the mothers, but nothing serious. Several of them were divorced. Specifically, they desired one more. I still looked good, owned everything outright, and ran 2 profitable businesses. Having franchised the eatery, I currently own 4 locations throughout this region of the state. In order to service the smaller towns, everyone possessed at least 3 trucks. I was living the high life. I located a different small town in need of supplies and opened a second store there. After Myra's husband was promoted to manager, he was finally able to stop belittling his boss, unless they both felt like it. Sherry lost the business and did not receive the romantic equipment rental offer that she had previously received. Her master chef left to start his own business, and she eventually ran out of business and had to close. She married a lawyer and went on to work as an office manager for a big insurance company. After 18 months, he discovered her infidelity. She is now engaged and still works at the same job. I'm hoping it continues. Billy and she still get together, mainly for birthdays and holidays. I was worn out. As I was opening my 6th restaurant, I had been working out of town. While I was traveling, Sarah stayed with Billy and they both stood there smiling. What? I checked my fly to make sure it was open. There is a guest here. Enter now. It was Angie. She flew into my arms and sobbed as we hugged. At least once a month, she had called us, or we had called her. Her voice carried sadness, which I could hear. Every time we had a conversation, I would tell her to go home because we missed her. She repeatedly promised to consider it. I questioned her about her intended length of stay. Hopefully, another 30 or 40 years. Well, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. To seagrass, I'm sick of having to walk to a park. Furthermore, I'm sick of sharing my home with strangers who don't seem interested in being neighbors. At night, I want to look up and see stars instead of smog. She grasped my hand. I also want to see you every single day. And Billy, I'm in awe of his size. The moment he stops growing, I'll bet he's taller than you. I want to see Myra, my true friends, and the guys from the dirt track. By then, she was sobbing on my shoulder. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I felt joy as I held her. We restored her home's condition. As the weeks passed, she began to lose weight and looked younger while still taking care of her garden and riding her cherished tractor. Her looks of youth returned. Sarah took a 1-bedroom apartment in a retirement community. It could be reached by car. When they moved her from her apartment into a larger 2-bedroom unit one day, she was taken aback. When I had her entire bill sent to me, she was even more shocked. Despite her protests, I overruled her. I also kept adding money to her checking account on a regular basis. You came through for Billy and me when we really needed you. This is retaliation. Billy needs a contented grandmother, so you need to have a larger home so he can spend weekends with you. End of discussion. Every night that he wasn't with his friends, we ate dinner together at my house or hers. After 3 months, we began dating. Films, live performances, and even some dancing. After visiting Ben's former workplace, she sobbed. They took care to extend invitations to us for every event. She said we were just old friends and denied they were on a date. Sitting on the front porch swing and watching Billy and his friends tearing up the field on their 4-wheelers brought everything into sharp focus. We had a thin blanket covering us, and it was a little chilly. I halted my rocking and met her gaze. Marry me. What? Wed me. You've had my love for years. You refuse to acknowledge your love for me. Let's get serious and stop acting like musical houses. Her cheeks were streaming with tears. But our ages. Hey, I'm aware that you are 50. You are aware of my age 43. I don't care. Pay attention to me. I don't care. Till the day I die, I will always love you. She was snuffling and rocking. This is a final warning. I promise Ben that if we get married, I won't ever set foot on this land again. Well, either now or later. She remained silent. Now that I was thinking of all I had lost, I was crying. It was she who tackled me when I was halfway across the porch. After we descended the stairs, Billy hurriedly approached. He comforted the sobbing Angie. Are you all right? Yes, honey, I am. The good news arrived just now. I'm going to become your mother by official decree in a few days or weeks. I hope that brings you joy. That day I discovered what a remarkable child I had raised. You've been my mother for a very long time. I can say it aloud now. Mom, you are loved. Years passed while people talked about the wedding and the following party. Myra really went all out. We got married outside in a farm meadow in the spring. Our reception area was the castle tent. Ben was surrounded by most of his old firm pals. Sophie came along when she was paying her parents a visit. She told Angie how lucky she was and planted a kiss on her. Her eyes told me there would be some explaining on my part. Her car was restored by the guys from the racetrack and given to her as a wedding present. The years passed in contentment and harmony. Billy completed his education, got married, and took over the family businesses with his spouse. We had my old house completely redone and gave it to them as a wedding present. 3 grandchildren were born to us. Bennett is the name he gave his son. I knew she was thinking of him because I occasionally noticed her getting gloomy. I had a renowned artist create an oil portrait of him for me, and I gave it to her on their approaching 50th wedding anniversary. After going to bed, she sobbed for 2 hours. Above the fireplace, we hung the portrait. Angie is playing with our youngest granddaughter on the floor at night, and even though he appears serious and my eyesight isn't the best it used to be, I can assure you that he's grinning. My comment, a good ending, which is rare these days. You think OP marrying another woman was the correct choice or not? Would you marry another person after your first divorce? Comment down below, sub and bell, and I will see you in the next one.